The Bloody Society podcast presents.
On this episode, things that go bump in the night. Vampire boys and girls, welcome back. Tonight we are doing something a little different.
Different is one word for it.
No politics tonight. No bloodline disputes. No dragon crown drama. Tonight, we are talking about the things that live in the dark. Not vampires, not shifters, not witches. The other things.
The things with no name.
Places that even we won't enter. Locations that have been avoided by the supernatural community for centuries, not out of legend, not out of superstition, but out of experience. Direct, documented, unambiguous experience.
And listener stories, which we asked for last week.
We asked, you delivered. Vampire boys and girls, your messages have been sitting in our inbox all week, and I will be honest with you, some of them kept me up.
And that is saying something, given what we are.
I'm Laércio. This is Scarlet. And tonight, we go somewhere darker than usual. Don't say we didn't warn you. Before we begin, a brief word on Venice, because our inbox has been somewhat overwhelmed since last episode.
Somewhat.
Vampire boys and girls, we hear you. The San Marco sighting, what Venice Nightblood reported. We have not forgotten. We are watching. What we can tell you tonight is, the situation in Venice remains fluid. Our sources on the ground are monitoring. The moment there is anything concrete to report, you will hear it here first.
Watch Venice. And in the meantime, let's talk about something else that's been keeping us both very alert at night.
The places that make even the oldest among us go very, very still. Places vampires won't enter. The historical record. Let's start with what the record shows, because this is not new. The supernatural community has been documenting certain locations for centuries. Places marked in the old registries not as dangerous to humans, but dangerous to us. Real places. Places you can visit. Places that are on maps. Which somehow makes it worse.
We begin with Poveglia, because vampire boys and girls, if you have been following this show, you already know that name.
We know it.
Poveglia is a small island in the Venetian lagoon. For centuries, it served as a quarantine island. Thousands of plague victims were sent there to die. Their bodies burned in mass pyres. The soil of that island is estimated to be 40% human ash. It has been on the supernatural community's avoid list for 500 years. Not because of the dead. The dead do not frighten us. Because of what the concentration of that much suffering, That much unresolved death attracts over time. What it feeds, what it becomes.
The Italian government closed Poveglia to the public decades ago. They cite safety concerns about the crumbling structures. Our community has a different understanding of why no one should go there. And given what we now know may be happening in Venice, we simply note that Poveglia exists, and that it is avoided for reasons that have nothing to do with architecture.
The Catacombs of Paris.
"6 million dead. Beneath one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Beneath streets we walk every night.
The catacombs were established in the 18th century to address a crisis. Parisian cemeteries were overflowing, contaminating the groundwater. So they moved the bones, millions of them, arranged them into walls, into patterns, into something that was meant to be orderly. What they created instead was one of the largest concentrations of displaced human remains on Earth. 6 million people removed from their resting places and stacked into tunnels beneath a living city.
And the supernatural community?
Uses the legitimate sections, the tourist areas, the mapped tunnels, without incident. The unmapped sections are another matter entirely. There are approximately 300 kilometers of tunnels beneath Paris that are not on any official map. The vampire community has one rule about those tunnels that has not changed in 200 years. You do not go past the marked boundaries. You do not go into the dark parts. Several vampires who ignored that rule over the centuries were never found. Not their remains, not their belongings, nothing.
6 million dead, and something down there that makes them disappear. Vampire boys and girls. I live 20 minutes from Paris. I've never been into those tunnels. I will never go into those tunnels. Moving on.
The Edinburgh Vaults.
You've been there.
Once, a long time ago. The Edinburgh Vaults are a series of chambers beneath the South Bridge in Scotland. Built in the late 18th century, used for trade, for storage, for housing the city's poorest residents. By the mid-19th century, they had been sealed and forgotten. When they were rediscovered in the 1980s,
Scarlet.
the documented paranormal activity in the Edinburgh Vaults is among the most independently verified in human record. Hundreds of separate witnesses, equipment failures, physical contact, apparitions. But what the human accounts don't capture, and what I can tell you from standing in those chambers myself, is the quality of what lives there. It is not residual. It is not memory. It is present, aware, and deeply, profoundly unhappy about visitors.
How long did you stay?
Long enough to understand why the supernatural community has avoided it for 3 centuries. Not long enough to find out what happens if you stay longer. I made a decision, and I left. That is all I will say about it.
And finally, and this one, vampire boys and girls, is perhaps the strangest of all. La Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls. Mexico City.
Tell them.
A small island in the canals of Xochimilco, south of Mexico City. In the 1950s, a man named Julian Santana Barrera began hanging dolls from the trees. Hundreds of them. Thousands eventually. Decaying, dismembered, weathered dolls. Eyes open, hanging from every branch of every tree on the island. He claimed he was appeasing the spirit of a young girl who had drowned in the canal. He did this for 50 years. In 2001, Julian drowned in the same canal, in the same spot where he said the girl had drowned.
The supernatural community's position on the island of the dolls is unanimous, and has been for decades.
Yeah, we do not go there.
Not because of the dolls. The dolls are a symptom. Whatever Julian Santana was trying to appease, whatever he spent 50 years in dialogue with in those canals, it is still there, and it has been there considerably longer than the dolls have.
I was born in Brazil, grew up in London, which is where the accent comes from, before anyone asks. But I spent enough time across Latin America in my first decades as a vampire to know those waterways. I know Xochimilco. I know what the canals feel like at night, the way the water moves, the sounds. None of that prepared me for what sits on that island. You feel it from the boat, a kind of pressure. Like the air is thicker there, like something has been paying very close attention to the water for a very long time and has learned to extend that attention outward. The dolls are not the haunting. The dolls are the warning. Julian understood that. He spent 50 years trying to tell us something, and we turned it into a tourist attraction.
He drowned in the same spot as the girl.
In the same spot. On the same date, some accounts say. I don't believe in coincidence. I am a vampire. I have lived long enough to understand that certain things rhyme on purpose. That island is different. Even from the water, at a distance, you can feel that something there has been listening for a very long time, and that it is very, very patient.
Patience in something ancient and unnameable is the most frightening quality there is.
We are going to take a breath here, and then we are going to read your messages. Tonight, we showcase your hauntings. You sent us your stories, and I want to say, before we read them, thank you for trusting us with these. Some of you have never told anyone. We don't take that lightly.
We don't.
First, from Midnight Archive 88. I'm a vampire, turned 1987. Been around long enough to know what fear feels like and what it doesn't. Last year I was passing through a small town in the Scottish Highlands. I won't name it. There was a house at the edge of town, just standing there. No lights, no particular history anyone could tell me. I wasn't going to go in. I wasn't even curious. But I walked past it, and every instinct I have, everything that has kept me alive for nearly 40 years as a vampire, went completely silent. Not on alert, silent. Like something in there had already assessed me and decided I wasn't worth the trouble. That last line.
Decided I wasn't worth the trouble.
That is not a haunting. That is something with preferences.
Yes, it is.
From Darkling Forever. Our loyal Darkling Forever. This isn't my story. It's my maker's. She's 4 centuries old, and she has exactly one rule she has never explained to me. We do not go to the old harbour in our city after midnight. Ever. I asked her once. She looked at me the way she only looks at things that have genuinely frightened her and said, "Something lives there that was old before I was born, and it knows what we are." 4 centuries old, and she has one rule.
Something that was old before a 400-year-old vampire was born. That is not a ghost, vampire boys and girls. That is something else entirely.
From Nightblood, Edinburgh. I want to respond to something I suspect you'll cover tonight. I have lived in Edinburgh for 80 years. I know the vaults. Every vampire in this city knows the rule. Tourist sections only, and even then, not alone. Last year, a newly turned vampire in our community, young, curious, the way they always are, went into the unmapped sections on a dare. He came back 40 minutes later, sat down on the pavement outside, and didn't speak for 6 hours. When he finally did, he said only one thing. There are people down there who don't know they're dead, and they are so angry. People who don't know they're dead. And they are so angry. Is he all right?
That's what you took from that story?
I want to know if the kid is all right.
So do I, actually.
Nightblood, Edinburgh. If you're listening, tell us he's all right. From Crimson Vale, Paris. You're going to talk about the catacombs tonight, and I need you to add something the tourist accounts leave out. There is a section of the tunnels, I know exactly where it is, and I will not say, where the arrangement of the bones changes. They stop being stacked, they start being arranged. Not by workers, not in any pattern consistent with the 18th century transfers. Something arranged them after, into shapes that have no name in any language I speak. I have been a vampire for 112 years. I have a classics degree from the Sorbonne. I have studied every symbolic system I could find. I cannot tell you what those shapes mean. What I can tell you is that they face inward. Whatever made them was not making art. It was making a door.
A door.
A door. I'm going to need a moment before the next one. And the last one, from Vampire Archivist. There is a bridge in my city that every supernatural being avoids after 3 a.m. Not because of legend, because 6 vampires have reported the same experience independently, across 2 decades, with no contact between them. Standing on the bridge after 3 a.m., they each felt something surface beneath the water. Not a creature, not a presence, a sound, below the threshold of human hearing, but perfectly clear to vampire senses. They all describe it the same way. It sounds like counting.
Counting.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Stop it. You just gave me goosebumps.
I'll take that as a compliment. 6 vampires, 2 decades, no contact between them, the same sound. I want to move on now, but I also want to tell you something first. Because I have been sitting on this all episode, and I think this is the moment.
Laércio?
I have a story of my own.
You have never mentioned this.
No, I haven't. I don't talk about it. I wasn't going to talk about it tonight. But listening to these messages... All right, here it is. I've been a vampire for just over 60 years. My maker was based in Sao Paulo. In my first decade, when you're still learning what you are, what you can do, what the world actually looks like now that you can see all of it, she took me to an old colonial estate outside the city. It had been abandoned since the early 1900s. She didn't tell me why we were going. She said it was part of my education. My maker was 140 years old when she turned me. Old enough to be careful. Old enough to have made peace with most of what the world contained. She was not a frightened vampire. She was not superstitious. She was the most pragmatic creature I have ever known. She approached the supernatural world the way a surgeon approaches a body, methodical, unsentimental. Which is why the way she drove to that estate stays with me. She was quiet the entire journey. Not thoughtful quiet, careful quiet. The kind of quiet that means someone is managing themselves.
She was afraid.
She was afraid. And she didn't want me to see it. Which meant she needed me to see what she was showing me more than she needed to protect me from being frightened. That is the part that has never left me. Whatever was on that property, she considered it important enough to bring a 10-year-old vampire to its gate, despite being afraid. That is the measure of it. Not what I felt standing there, but what it cost her to take me.
Go on.
We stopped at the gate. She looked at the house for a long time, and then she said, and I remember this exactly, she said, "There is something inside that property that does not belong to our world, or any world adjacent to it. I am going to show you its boundary. We are not going past it. Whatever you feel when we approach, do not speak to it. Do not acknowledge it. Do not let it know you are aware of it."
She knew it was sentient.
She knew. We walked to the edge of the property, not through the gate, just to the perimeter, and I felt it immediately. Not fear, not danger, something like being read, like every single thing I was, every memory, every thought, everything I had ever done or would ever do was being examined. Calmly, thoroughly, with complete indifference to whether I found the experience comfortable.
What happened?
My maker put her hand on my arm, firmly, and we walked away, without speaking. We didn't speak for 2 hours afterward. When she finally said something, all she said was, "Now you know there are things in this world that are not for us to understand. Remember that."
I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Nobody does. I have been a broadcaster for 30 years. I have covered supernatural politics, gossip, scandal, war. I have interviewed millionaires. I have reported from conflict zones in the supernatural world. That afternoon, at a gate in Sao Paulo, is the only time in 60 years as a vampire that I have felt genuinely vulnerable.
Laércio.
We don't talk about it. Because there's nothing useful to say. It was there. It saw us. It let us leave. And that, vampire boys and girls, is the most frightening sentence I have ever spoken on air. It let us leave.
Vampire darlings. There are things in this world that predate us, that will outlast us, that exist entirely outside the categories we use to understand the supernatural. Bloodlines, power, age, source. We are not the apex of what lives in the dark. We are simply the most visible.
On that note, what a note to close on.
What a note.
Vampire boys and girls, keep sending us your stories. We will read every one. And if you have been to one of the places we discussed tonight, please stay out. Some doors are closed for a reason. One more thing before we go. We have been told, and this genuinely delights me, that not all of our listeners are of our kind. Human darklings, welcome. Truly, you are braver than most vampires I know, simply for tuning in to this particular show on this particular night. And if you have a story, a place that felt wrong, a night you cannot explain, something you saw that nobody believed, we want to hear it. Write to us. contact@thevampireshow.com. We read everything. We judge nothing. The dark does not discriminate, and neither do we.
Within reason.
Within reason.
Stay bloody gorgeous, darlings. And leave the lights on.
Good night. Whatever that means.
This is Laércio, your favorite vampire streamer, signing off.
And this is Scarlet, spoiled brat vampire extraordinaire.
You're listening to the Bloody Society podcast, transmitting for you live, kind of, from our private studio in the dark corner of the interweb. Don't miss our weekly episodes.
Until next time, stay bloody gorgeous, darlings.